Scroll disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. It is intended solely for emotional and dramatic storytelling. All characters, incidents, and places are imaginary and bear no resemblance to real people or events. Any similarity is purely coincidental. The story explores complex family dynamics, buried emotions, and sensitive situations. Reader discretion is advised. It had been almost 7 years since I had last seen my cousin Melissa. Life had taken us in different directions, careers, cities, relationships, all keeping us too busy to visit or even call. So when she called me one Thursday afternoon, her voice shaky but warm, I was surprised. "Hey, I know it's sudden," she said, "but would you mind staying the night tomorrow? There's a storm warning." I just thought it'd be safer than driving back. At first, I hesitated. We hadn't spoken properly in so long. But something in her voice, an undertone of loneliness or maybe desperation, made me agree. I packed a small overnight bag, loaded with memories more than clothes, and hit the road toward the small town we both once called home. Melissa's house was exactly as I remembered it. White fences, a maple tree in the yard, the porch light flickering like always. But inside, the air felt different. Not cold, not hostile, just heavy. The kind of air that holds back words people are afraid to speak. She hugged me at the door, tight and longer than expected. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. I smiled, but couldn't ignore how tired her eyes looked. "Of course. It's been too long." We sat in the kitchen for a while, sipping tea. She updated me on her job, her new hobby of gardening, and, of course, her teenage son Adam, now 16. I remembered him only as a toddler, clinging to Melissa's leg during family dinners. "He's grown quiet these days," she admitted. "Spends a lot of time in his room. But he's a good kid." I nodded, unsure of what to say. There was something in her tone, like she was trying to convince herself. Soon, she showed me to the guest room, across the hall from Adam's. The room was neatly made, but I noticed dust on the windowsill and an old rocking chair in the corner, covered with a white sheet. The kind of chair grandmothers sit in. Or maybe someone else. I placed my bag down and looked around. A small framed photo on the bedside table caught my eye. It was of us, years ago, as kids playing in the garden behind this very house. It warmed me, but it also stirred something uncertain. After dinner, Adam finally appeared, tall, lanky, with quiet eyes that avoided mine. He mumbled a hello, then disappeared down the hallway without another word. "He's shy," Melissa said, smiling faintly. I nodded again. But something didn't sit right. That night, the wind howled outside. Rain tapped gently on the window pane. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that the house remembered more than it let on. And for some reason, I had a feeling tomorrow would change everything. Morning came wrapped in fog. The storm from the night before had passed, but the house still felt wrapped in shadows. I opened the creaky wooden blinds to let in what little light the gray sky offered. The smell of coffee drifted in faintly rich, warm, almost comforting. I made my way to the kitchen, where Melissa was already standing by the stove, flipping pancakes with a soft smile on her face. It felt like she was trying a little too hard to make things feel normal. "Morning," she said. "Sleep okay?" I gave a half smile. "Yeah, the rain actually helped." She nodded, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Adam's still asleep. He stays up late now, playing guitar in his room or reading. I hardly hear him some nights." There it was again, a subtle defensiveness in her voice, like she needed to explain his behavior before I could question it. I hadn't even said anything yet, but I could feel it. Something wasn't right. We sat down at the table, quietly eating. The only sounds were forks scraping against plates and the hum of the old refrigerator. I glanced at the hallway leading to Adam's room. It was still dark. Melissa finally broke the silence. "I know it's been a while since we talked. I'm really glad you came. I've missed you." "I've missed you too," I said honestly. "I just wish we'd stayed in touch more." She looked down, stirring her coffee. "Yeah, life gets in the way." There were words between us, floating like ghosts, never spoken, never named. We had both grown up in this very house, after her parents passed away. I moved out when I was 15 to live with my father. She stayed here, raised by her grandmother. I never asked what happened after that. And she never told. Midway through breakfast, I heard soft footsteps. Adam emerged, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, hair messy, eyes puffy from sleep, or maybe not sleeping at all. He looked at me with vague recognition, then at his mother. "Morning," he mumbled. Melissa smiled too quickly. "Good morning, sweetheart. Want pancakes?" He shook his head. "I'm not hungry." Then turned to me. "Nice to see you, I guess." He walked to the living room, grabbed his headphones from the couch, and disappeared back into the hallway. I watched him go. "He doesn't usually act like that," Melissa said immediately, not meeting my eyes. "He's just tired. School's been stressful." I nodded, but deep inside, my curiosity was building. Later that day, while Melissa went to the store, I walked past Adam's door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, I caught a glimpse of his room, books piled high, guitar on the floor, and sketches taped to the wall. One sketch in particular caught my attention, a drawing of the guest room. My room. The bed, the window, the rocking chair, all drawn in detail. But in the corner, a figure. A shadow. I stepped back, suddenly cold. Something was being kept from me, something deep and unsettling. And I had a feeling it involved more than just Adam's teenage angst. By late evening, Melissa had returned with groceries and tried to spark small talk, but I could feel the strain in her voice. We watched TV in the living room for a while, some sitcom neither of us paid attention to, before she finally excused herself. "I've got an early meeting in the morning. You okay if I head to bed early?" "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. She leaned in and gave me a hug. "Let me know if you need anything, all right? Good night." Good night. With Melissa gone, the silence grew louder. The house creaked as the wind picked up again, though there was no storm this time. The laughter track from the TV show filled the background like distant echoes in an empty auditorium. I finally turned it off and headed toward the guest room. Inside, the air was cooler than before. The rocking chair in the corner still had that white sheet covering it, but now it seemed more like a shroud than simple cloth. My eyes kept drifting to it, despite myself. I shut the door, trying to dismiss the unease crawling under my skin. As I lay in bed, my thoughts wandered back to Adam's sketch. That image of the guest room, with a dark, shaded figure standing in the corner, wouldn't leave my mind. Why had he drawn that? Why did it feel so accurate, as if he'd seen something I hadn't yet? Around midnight, just as sleep was beginning to take over, I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was the window. But then I realized it was coming from inside the room. My eyes shot open. The sound stopped. I sat up, listening closely. Nothing. Then the door creaked. It wasn't a loud sound, but it was distinct enough to make my skin prickle. Slowly, the door pushed inward, and Adam stood there. He wasn't saying anything. He just stood in the doorway, partially in shadow, barefoot, hoodie sleeves covering his hands. "Adam," I whispered, startled. I thought this room was empty," he said, eyes not meeting mine. "I forgot someone was staying here. Are you okay?" He hesitated. "I didn't mean to scare you. I come in here sometimes." "Why?" He looked at the rocking chair. "To talk to her." My heart stilled. "To who?" Adam stepped back into the hall, his voice barely audible. "My grandmother." I sat frozen. I wanted to ask more, but he was already walking away. The door gently clicked shut. I sat there for what felt like an hour, trying to make sense of what just happened. The room suddenly felt colder, as if someone else was there. I looked at the chair in the corner, and this time, I wasn't sure if the sheet was completely still. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, forcing myself to close my eyes. But sleep wouldn't come. Something wasn't just strange in this house, it was watching. The next morning, I woke up groggy, my sleep interrupted by dreams I couldn't fully remember, just flashes. The rocking chair slowly rocking on its own, a voice whispering my name, a shadow lingering by the window. I told myself it was just my imagination, fed by Adam's strange visit the night before. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I found Melissa in the kitchen, dressed and ready to leave for work. I hope Adam didn't bother you last night, she said casually as she poured herself coffee. My heart skipped. You knew he came into my room? She paused, her back still to me. He does that sometimes. He sleepwalks. Has since he was little. He doesn't mean anything by it. Melissa, I hesitated. He said he talks to your grandmother. In that room. She turned slowly, her smile strained. I'm sorry if that upset you. He's dealing with some things. He gets attached to places. To people he's never even met. Never met. My grandmother died before he was born. That stopped me. I didn't know what to say. She softened her tone. Please don't read into it. I really appreciate you being here. I think it's actually been good for him to have someone around. Before I could respond, she grabbed her bag and keys. I'll be back around 6. Some showed people in the house, his mother in the kitchen, himself in bed, me sitting in the guest room. But one drawing sent chills through me. It showed the whole way outside the guest room. And in it, standing in the dark, was a tall, dark silhouette. The way it loomed over the door, my door, made my stomach twist. Just then, a sound behind me. I turned quickly. Adam was standing there. I didn't hear you, I said, startled. He looked at me quietly, then glanced at the sketch I was holding. She doesn't like it when people come in without asking. I blinked. Who doesn't? He pointed at the guest room. The woman in your room. Adam, there's no one in there. He shrugged. She comes and goes. Mostly at night. But sometimes, she watches during the day, too. His face was blank, but his tone was matter-of-fact, like he wasn't trying to scare me, he believed it. I didn't draw her at first. But she told me to. A cold shiver ran down my spine. And last night, I asked softly, why did you come in? He looked away. I think she wanted you to see me. She wanted you to remember. Remember what? But Adam didn't answer. He simply walked past me, into the kitchen, leaving me standing there in a room full of ghosts and unanswered questions. I didn't leave the house that day. I stayed, pacing the wooden floors, thinking, remembering. Something about Adam's words had opened a door in my mind, one I didn't realize had been shut for years. She wanted you to remember, he had said. But remember what? That night, I lay awake again. The air felt thicker than usual, charged, as if waiting for something. The old photo on the bedside table caught my eye again. Me and Melissa in the garden, laughing, sun on our faces. But just behind us in the picture, near the porch, was a figure. Blurred. Faint. I'd never noticed it before. I got up and turned the photo over. On the back, in faint pencil, was a name I hadn't heard in decades, Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor. Melissa's grandmother. She had raised her in this house. And though I never truly lived here, I remembered visiting. I remembered her perfume, the soft sound of her slippers on the floor, the humming she always did while watering her plants. But I also remembered something else. The basement door. As kids, we were never allowed to open it. It was always locked. Melissa used to whisper to me that strange things happened down there. That sometimes she heard Eleanor talking to people who weren't there. Crying in the middle of the night. The grown-ups always told us it was just our imagination. But now I wasn't so sure. I stepped out of the room and quietly moved through the dark hallway. The house was silent, save for the occasional creak of old wood. I found the basement door beside the kitchen pantry. To my surprise, it was unlocked. I took a breath and slowly pulled it open. The smell of dust and something older, something sweet and rotten rose up to greet me. I grabbed a flashlight from the counter and descended carefully. The basement was cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and plastic-covered photo frames. But what drew my eye was a wooden chest near the far wall. It looked ancient, the kind of thing you'd see in an attic in a Gothic novel. I knelt down, heart pounding, and opened it. Inside were journals. Dozens of them. All marked Eleanor. I picked one at random and began to read. October 13th, 1992. Melissa has been acting strange again. She keeps saying she sees someone at night. A woman in the mirror. I told her to stop lying. But she swears it's real. I wonder if it's starting again. Like it did with her mother. I froze. Melissa's mother? I flipped through more entries. Eleanor wrote about voices, about visions, about locking herself in rooms for hours to protect herself from something she couldn't name. She believed something followed the women in our family. Something dark. Something inherited. That's when I realized this wasn't about ghosts. This was about legacy. About trauma passed down, unspoken and unhealed. Adam wasn't making things up. He was sensitive to it. Maybe even more than Melissa ever was. And I had stayed away from this house not because I hated it, but because something deep down feared it. I took the journal upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed. Now I knew. Now I remembered. And I finally understood what Adam had meant. She wanted you to remember. Melissa came home around 6:30 p.m., rain soaking her coat and the ends of her hair. She looked exhausted, though not just from the weather. There were years behind her eyes. A lifetime of pretending things were fine. I waited until Adam went to his room before I confronted her. I had the journal in my lap and 1,000 questions in my chest. "We need to talk," I said, my voice lower than I expected. She sighed, dropping her purse on the couch. I figured this was coming. I held up the journal. "You knew about all of this?" "About what?" Eleanor wrote. "The things she saw. The things you saw as a child." Melissa sat slowly across from me, wringing her hands like she was holding on to the last threads of a lie. "I tried to forget," she whispered. "I thought if I didn't speak about it, it wouldn't follow me. Or Adam. But it has followed you." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "It started with my mother. She was never the same after I was born. She said she heard someone whispering to her at night. That there was a woman in the house who wasn't from this world. My dad called it postpartum depression. But then she started drawing rooms in the house, people she said she'd never met but could describe perfectly." I shivered. "And then?" I asked. "She disappeared," Melissa said softly. "One day, she walked into the basement and never came back. They searched for days, but there was no trace. Eleanor told everyone she'd probably run away. But I knew. Even as a kid, I knew the house had swallowed her." My heart pounded as I remembered the basement chest, the musty smell, the decaying wood. Had she been buried down there? Or had something else taken her? "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. "Because you left," Melissa said sharply, her voice cracking. "You got to live in a normal house, with a father who wasn't afraid of the dark. I stayed here. With her." "Her?" Melissa looked at the guest room door. She always hated outsiders. Hated change. She wanted everything to stay frozen, like time itself couldn't touch this place. She hated when my mom tried to move out. And when you used to visit, she'd stand outside your room at night, humming. I thought you were asleep, but I saw her. Watching. I felt sick. My chest was tight, my hands cold. "What does she want now?" I whispered. Melissa stared at me, her voice hollow. "I think she wants Adam. But she can't reach him directly. So she's using someone else. Someone she knew would come back." I didn't have to ask who she meant. Me. Suddenly, the house creaked above us. A long, slow moan of old wood settling or something moving. We both looked up toward the hallway. "She's awake," Melissa whispered. "And she knows. We're talking about her." The house felt alive. The walls creaked under pressure that wasn't from the wind. The lights flickered once, twice, and then stabilized. Melissa and I sat frozen in the dim glow of the living room lamp. Her words echoed in my ears. "She's awake." Adam hadn't come out of his room. I wasn't sure if he was asleep or trying to stay invisible. I couldn't blame him either way. I stood up, the weight of everything bearing down on me. "I can't stay here and pretend this is normal, Melissa. This house, this thing, it's real. And it's hurting him." "It hurt you." She nodded slowly, her hands clasped tightly on her lap. "I know," she said. "But I didn't know how to stop it. Every time I tried to move, something happened. A car crash. A job loss. One time, Adam went missing in the yard. I found him standing in the garden talking to no one. He said she told him to stay close." "And you didn't leave then?" I was scared. And ashamed. Who would believe me? I turned toward the guest room. "I think I need to see her." Melissa's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" "I need to face her. If she wants something from me, then I want to know what." "Why no? Why through Adam?" Why haunt a child? You can't reason with her. I'm not trying to reason, I said firmly. I'm ending this. Melissa stood up, grabbed my wrist. You go in there, she might not let you out. She already has me, Melissa. Ever since I walked back into this house. I pulled away and walked toward the guest room. My feet felt like they were made of stone. The door opened slowly with a creak I'd come to know too well. The room was dim, shadows stretching long across the floor. I stepped inside. Nothing. I closed the door behind me. I stood in the center of the room, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I know you're here, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. You've haunted this house long enough. You've hurt this family enough. The rocking chair moved. Slowly. Back and forth. Back and forth. The white sheet that covered it slid off, as if lifted. I took a step forward, fists clenched. I'm not afraid of you. The mirror on the wall suddenly fogged over. I stared at it, breath caught in my throat. Then, words began to appear, etched into the mist from the inside. You left me. I blinked. What? The mirror shook slightly as if vibrating with fury. You promised. Suddenly, it hit me like a jolt to the spine. Eleanor hadn't meant Melissa. She meant me. My memory fractured open. I had stayed here as a child longer than I remembered. And one night, I had spoken to someone in the rocking chair. I had promised to come back. But I never did. I had buried the memory deep. I had broken a promise I didn't even remember making. I was a child, I whispered. I didn't know what I was saying. The mirror cracked, not shattered, but cracked straight down the center. Behind me, the door opened. Adam stood there. She's angry, he said softly. But she's also tired. I knelt down, speaking to the room, to the chair, to the air itself. I'm sorry, Eleanor. But you have to let go. It's time. The rocking chair stopped. The air turned still. And in that silence, I knew something had finally changed. The house was quiet, truly quiet, for the first time in days. No whispers. No footsteps. No cold drafts where there shouldn't be any. The air felt still, but not heavy anymore. It felt like something had left, like the house had exhaled after holding its breath for years. Adam stood beside me, staring into the now motionless rocking chair. His face was calm. Curious, even. Like he could feel it too. She's not here anymore, he said quietly. I looked at him. His eyes weren't darting or shadowed. They were steady, clear. Melissa came rushing in, her face pale, her eyes darting between the two of us and the rocking chair. Are you okay? What happened? She's gone, I told her. I think she just needed to be heard. To be remembered. And released. Melissa stared at me like she didn't quite believe it, but part of her wanted to. Desperately. I walked over to the mirror. The crack remained. But the fog had cleared. I could see my own reflection now, not distorted, not shadowed. Just me. We stayed up for a while, the three of us, talking in the kitchen. For the first time, Melissa opened up about the years she had been too afraid to speak. About her mother's breakdown. About how Eleanor changed after her disappearance. And how Adam had started drawing things he couldn't explain at the age of 4. I shared what I remembered too, that night from my childhood when I spoke to someone in the dark. How I made a promise with a child's innocence and then left and forgot. But Eleanor hadn't. She had been waiting. Maybe for me. Maybe for someone to finally acknowledge the pain she never let go of. We didn't have all the answers. Maybe we never would. But this house, had changed. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows. The sky was clear, and the garden outside looked greener than I remembered. Melissa made coffee, and Adam even sat down and had breakfast with us. He smiled. It was small, subtle, but real. It was the first time I saw him without that fog of something unseen hanging around him. After breakfast, I packed my bag. I was leaving, but this time, there was no weight in my chest. Only something like peace. Melissa walked me to the car. Thank you, she said, hugging me tightly. I didn't know how much I was carrying until you came back. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, I said. Neither does Adam. She nodded, eyes shimmering with tears she didn't try to hide. As I started the engine, Adam appeared at the door. He waved shy, but open. I waved back. Driving away, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. The house stood tall behind me, still a place of memories, but no longer haunted by them. Not in the same way. The past had finally let go. And maybe, just maybe, we had too. 53.